Hi there, I'm Martha Van Dam and this is Living Beyond. And where I live in the States, right now, the week that we are just about to start is the week of July 4th, our Independence Day. And it's a big deal. There will be barbecues and cookouts and fireworks and people taking the day off. People where there's water, they'll be in boats, they'll be skiing, they'll be just floating. And so it's just kind of a big thing for us. It's a great opportunity for you and me to take a minute and think about freedom, but not necessarily to think about political freedom for us. Yes, it's important for everyone. Yes, it's something that does need attention for certain people in certain places. But for us, we do live in a place of relative freedom within our countries, relative. What I'd like us to talk about today is to think about our personal freedoms. And those personal freedoms can only take place in a place where we're politically free, for sure. But we are politically free. So let's talk about the personal freedoms that we actually have if we're taking advantage of them. And so as I list off some of these freedoms, think to yourself and think if in any way you don't quite feel free in these areas. So what about first, in the realm of personal freedom, the freedom of self-expression and individuality? Now before you go, yeah, okay, sure, before you just toss it off, think about this. Do you ever feel anything that holds you back from being able to express yourself, your self-expression, and using your individuality? What about that freedom? You hear about people talking about being their authentic selves, the freedom to express themselves any way they want, that within reason, the way that they want to. We think about wanting to make decisions of our own, make decisions in what directions we're going to take, what job, what type of religion or not, what type of car we're going to drive, clothes we're going to wear. All the decisions that we make in our lives. Oh, and some major ones. Are we going to go to school or not? Are we going to start a business? Are we going to work for someone else? What are we going to do to provide for ourselves? Are we going to marry? Are we not? Are we going to have children? Are we not? You see, there's so many decisions, but we are actually free to make those decisions. As I'm listing these things, I want you to think, am I feeling myself free to make these decisions? Another one is a decision to pursue your own interest and support your own growth. The things that are interesting to you, the things that you want to grow and you want to learn in, the ability to pursue education, to enhance your abilities in whichever direction you want to go. Are you making the use of that freedom? I think sometimes we live in places where we haven't had our freedoms questioned like they may have in some other places, even right now. And we may lose a little sight of the value of those things and begin to take them for granted. How about the personal freedom to help others? When I first thought of this, I thought, now how does that apply? And it occurred to me back in World War II times, in Poland and Germany and Austria, any of the countries, once the Germans, the Nazis came in and took over, then the people in the towns were not free to support their neighbors. If they thought their neighbor was doing something that the new government didn't like, they would have to turn them in or they themselves would be in trouble. We don't have that. We can disagree, we can live very different lives, but we're not in trouble to do so. Do you support your neighbors in whatever it is in their life, even if their life is different from yours? It's important to think about. And before we go to the last tying up piece, I want to ask you some questions. What are some things that can hold us back from our freedom? Do you ever have fears of what others are going to think about your decisions? How about how others are what kinds of feelings are going to be elicited? What kind of feelings other people are going to have about your feelings? Do you ever find manipulation happening in a way that someone else is manipulating you so that you don't feel free to make the decisions, the choices, the moves that you want to make? Think about that a moment. What drives the decisions that you make? Is it these are things that are important to you, these line up with your values, and these are things you're going to do and move in that direction? Or are you being manipulated by others' opinions, thoughts, pushes, It's worth giving it some time to think about. And the last thing I want to close out with, but perhaps the most important thing, is that in order for us, for freedom to flourish and for freedom to have its best work, there's something else that must be there. Freedom has a twin and an opposite, but a twin called responsibility. With all the freedom in the world, if we don't have responsibility, eventually we will lose our freedoms. And at the same time, if we are living responsibly, we will be enhancing our freedoms. Freedom and responsibility, they go hand in hand. And to close out, here's a great story for you. Many of you have heard of the author Viktor Frankl. He was a psychiatrist. He was imprisoned in Auschwitz, and he survived. He survived and left us a book, a fabulous book about finding meaning in the whatever it is that we're facing in life. And his discovery was that if there's meaning behind it, we can deal with just about anything. And I'll take that pretty seriously, coming from someone who's learning his lessons in Auschwitz. But he said, he is the one who said, or one of the ones who has said, that freedom needs responsibility. And this is a quote from him. He said, freedom, however, is not the last word. Freedom is only part of the story and half of the truth. Freedom is but the negative aspect of the whole phenomenon, whose positive aspect is responsibleness. In fact, freedom is in danger of degenerating into mere arbitrariness unless it is lived in terms of responsibleness. That is why I recommend, and remember, this is Frankl talking, that is why I recommend that the Statue of Liberty on the East Coast be supplemented by a Statue of Responsibility on the West Coast. You see, he saw them as bookends, and he saw that we needed to have both, and that we do an awful lot of talking about how free we are. We are free to do this, free to do what we want, free to make our choices. I talked about that just at the beginning of this video. But we better not leave out the twin, which is responsibility. Because if we only take freedom, then we begin to say, I have freedom to do whatever I want, and it doesn't matter if it hurts you. I have freedom to take whatever I want, doesn't matter if it hurts you. I have freedom to say, do, be anything I want, no matter, and it doesn't matter how it affects anyone else on the planet. And that's just not right. Our actions do affect other people, and sometimes they affect them in big ways. And because of that, then they come back and they affect us and they affect our world. So it is with responsibility. If we exert our freedom with responsibility, then we have ways to make changes in this world and in our own lives that can't even be calculated from this side. So as you move forward today, please do two things. Please think about how are some ways that I could be allowing some of my freedoms to be boxed in. Even though I'm free, how can some of these abilities that I have, how am I boxing them in some way or another? How am I allowing myself to be controlled and not free by others or by my own fears? Oh, our fears can be so loud sometimes. And when we get some of those answers, when you think through some, maybe you might decide, I think I am afraid of how people respond to me, or I'm afraid of being embarrassed, or it is very upsetting to me if someone else is upset, so I don't want to upset them and I lose my freedom because of their emotions. As you're digging through, come up with some ways that you can grow your freedom. You can expand yourself, and at the same time think, and how does that line up with responsibility? Am I acting while I'm making my choices within freedom? Am I acting in my integrity? Am I acting in responsibility? And those two things, when they come together, will come together beautifully, and you will be very pleased with what you see happening. I hope you have an amazing week. I hope you have a wonderful and happy 4th. And I hope you find more and more freedom. Thanks, and bye-bye.